Hello, so I wanted to do another video talking about Protect and Survive, and this isn't like a review of the book this time or showing you what's in it. This time basically what I want to go over is some of the actual good, useful prepping information that's in Protect and Survive. Because lots of people have the misconception that this was like a propaganda leaflet that basically said you'll be totally okay in nuclear war. That's not really what it is. What Protect and Survive is telling you is it gives you the idea of basically the highest chances of survival. So it's actually a useful booklet on its own. The only useless information in it is basically where it tries to pretend that if you're in a city you'll be just as safe as the countryside in the event of a nuclear war, which is false. Obviously, if you're in a city and there's several megaton warhead dropped on it, then you're pretty screwed. If you're in the countryside, you might be alright, depending on which country you're in, distance from cities, but it does obviously talk about fallout in here, but it does give some interesting advice on actual materials you should prep for, so especially if you're in some sort of bug-in scenario where you're going to be in your house. I will get to the section, we'll have a look at it. So, first, drinking water. This is quite interesting, this bit. Basically, it talks about filling up any buckets you have, bottles, jerry cans, things like that of water. Also, putting a plastic sort of tarp or whatever inside a bath or a sink, filling that with water and then covering it over so like dirty stuff's not going to get into the water. Obviously stockpiling canned food that's not going to be off and can be eaten cold in case you've got no electricity or heat. Portable radio. Basically what it does on here is it goes through the most important things first, which is obviously drinking water and food, and it goes down in priority. So in lower priority you have tin openers, bottle openers, cutlery and crockery. Again, cutlery and crockery aren't really needed if you're going to be eating out of cans with your fingers in a worst case scenario, but tin openers and can openers and bottle openers are a lot more necessary. Warm clothing, obviously, because if there's been some sort of major event and you've no longer got electricity or power, you're not going to have any heating. Bedding and sleeping bags and next, portable stove and fuel saucepans. So yeah, if you've not got any gas or electric for your house, you can at least have actual sort of camping stoves, which is probably something a lot of people don't consider if they're bugging in, but it's worth bearing that in mind, that obviously a camping stove with gas will work indoors even if there's no electricity or anything else. Torches with spare bulbs and batteries, candles and matches. Obviously a good idea to have spare batteries and torches if you're going to be trying to survive without electricity and power. Table and chairs. Now that's less important because you can sit on the floor, however you can use tables to make barricades and sort of things under them. One of the things they show you in this, obviously if it's relevant to radiation, is that you can get a sturdy table, put lots of layers on top of it, and then if you're under the table those layers will help to absorb gamma radiation, so less should actually get through to you. Spare clothes, obviously toiletry things. I'd actually put toiletry higher than things like table and chairs personally, but that is a good thing in my opinion, obviously, to have toothpaste, soap, stuff like that. Basic sanitation, first aid stuff. Again, I'd probably put first aid above actual things like table and chairs. But it's quite important, some of the things I say in here. The last one, interestingly, is clock, mechanical and calendar. So, actually having a proper wristwatch or mechanical clock that winds up so it will still work in the event of an electromagnetic kind of pulse, where, although it might not tell the time as accurately as it would if it was non-magnetised, that's kind of something to consider as well, which is, I don't think a lot of people would think of. Most of your house clocks are quartz clocks, and if there's an EMP they are not going to work, but mechanical clocks still will. All my wristwatches that wind up are obviously going to work in the event of there not being any power or spare batteries or anything like that. Until you physically break the watch, they will still work. There's also some interesting notes in here about having one bin for human waste and another bin for actual food waste, which is quite interesting. So obviously a lot of this is just simply about nuclear war, but as it stands there is good advice in here, as I said, filling up the sinks and baths, and also the toilet systems mentioned in here. See if I can find a picture of it. Yeah, there we go. So it's showing that you can obviously rig up the system so you can't pull the chain. Obviously, if you're not aware of how a toilet works, you have water fill up in the system that's clean, and then when you flush the chain, that clean water goes into the toilet bowl to flush it, so the actual water in the system is clean. So that's another good bit of advice there. So, yeah, as much as people do knock Protect and Survive, there is actually good information in this book. And there's lots of other manuals like that. Another thing in here it goes on about is keeping buckets of water handy, or other things like sand to put out fires in case, you know, your house catches fire in the event of a nuclear attack, which it may do if you're in a certain range, or you might just get completely wiped out. But the interesting thing I think about this is it does give you some things to consider that you might not actually have thought of. For example, obviously, you know, putting out fires. Had you thought of that in a bug-in situation? Do you have fire extinguishers or bucket of sands and water ready to throw on a fire if that broke out? It also talks about moving things away around in the house so you don't have flammable objects, you know, in a place you can't get at them. So do you have a lot of clutter in your attic or loft? Well, we certainly do. And that wouldn't be good, because in the event that something might catch fire, you've got lots of flammable materials all packed in there. So there's lots of interesting information in the book about how you should actually set up rooms if you think something might go down that would mean that, you know, you're more likely to not have a house fire, and if you do, you can put it out quickly. So yeah, there's lots of good advice in Protect and Survive, despite that it's got this reputation to being a sort of useless government propaganda mouthpiece. It's really not. As said, the only thing I saw in it when I reread it yesterday that, you know, I wouldn't say was true was it said, you know, you're just as much in danger or safe no matter where you are in the country, which is obviously not really true, because you know, if you're in the zone where the bomb is going to drop or the missile head's going to drop, the warhead, you're doomed if you're there. But if you're 100 miles away in the countryside, you might be alright, you know, minus the fallout. So as I said, Protect and Survive is actually quite interesting, simply because a lot of the stuff in it isn't actually false, even though people might assume it would be. So yeah, if you see a copy of Protect and Survive really cheap, I think you can get them on eBay cheap, because these are all the reprints now. It is worth picking up, just simply because there is information in there you might not have considered, and if anybody knows of other training sort of manuals like that that are useful, please list them in the comments for other people to read. There used to be some very good public service announcement sort of films that I think you can find on YouTube from around World War II that showed you how to, you know, deal with various things in your house to reduce the risk of it collapsing under bomb sort of attack and stuff like that, which is quite interesting as well. And there's some as well on chemical weapons, sort of how to almost rinse yourself down in the event of something happening with chemical weapons as well. So hopefully you found this video sort of useful, but yeah, Protect and Survive isn't as bad as it's made out to be. It's actually quite a good book.